cell phone number to text Kelly. Does anyone have a way to text Kelly?
I don't either. I know that she had accepted the meeting. So I'm not exactly sure where she is.
Yeah.
So call her.
Hey, Paul, just for your reference, on our website, RSU, under, if you just click on staff, you can't actually go to the drop down and find it, but if you click on staff, it brings you to this page, and you can bring up the ESP or the teacher's contract here. So the teacher contract for FY24, you know, based off of 0 years of tenure through 19, and depending on their, you know, level of education, this is all prescribed, and that's what they get. So.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And speaking of, I think the board, we might have her contact info right here now that we're looking at it. Here we go. I'll try to text her.
It sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mark, how are you?
All right.
Doing well, thank you. Sorry, a few minutes late. The boat was behind.
Okay, so Mark, I did share an updated version of the budget just before you joined, and where we're at. So just to recap, we have revised the overall budget to show a 3% increase year over year across all articles. Paul and I were discussing, and the rest of the group were discussing how, you know, an 8% increase in benefits could still result in a just general 3% increase across the board. And that's because they're pretty large line items amongst, you know, other articles like capital expenditures that do contribute, even though they're on, you know, only 20% of the overall general fund budget, they still make a big impact in how we come down to the bottom line. So Article 1 is regular instruction only. So this assumes that all of our kids that don't need additional supports, that aren't in special ed, we're not contributing, you know, anything to extracurricular activities or whatnot. This is just regular education in the 1,000 regular instruction function. Kelly's joining now. This is the salary and benefits and other account lines that fall under Article 1. And we'll go into Article 2 on Thursday. But right now, total Article 1 is coming in at about 2.5% increase. So 12.9 million over 12.6 million last year.
Hey, Max.
Yeah.
Where does pre-K fall? Which article?
Pre-K, I believe, falls in. Yeah, so pre-K is in Article 1.
Is there a line or lines numbers?
You know, pre-K is a regular classroom teacher and a regular ed tech per class. or 1.5 ed techs, I really should say.
Could you say that again,
It's-
please, John?
I said pre-K is a regular ed teacher.
Yep.
A regular ed tech and a half per classroom.
Okay, all right. I just want you all to know that I'm asking about that because all things being good in terms of year over year, I personally think we should look at growing our pre-K program over years, like we talked about before. So that's why I asked if it's in Article 1.
So if you want to look at line 81, and that's
81?
not that's not the Excel line. It should be,
Yeah.
you should see them there. 81,
Oh, yeah.
149, and 217.
81, 149.
Those are,
Yep. Okay.
so some of them, I'm
217.
trying to get the teachers here.
Okay.
But if let me do it this way, actually, and share my screen.
Okay. That's
If you
good.
want to look, let me minimize some of this. So if I'm looking at next year's budget just for pre-K, are you guys seeing my screen?
Yeah.
All right. So I want to filter just for regular pre-K programs. We have 216,000 budgeted for pre-K next year. And that's all at Ashpoint. And wait, no, there's one at TGS as well, but nothing's in there. I guess we had it there at some point.
What do we get from the state per student in pre-K, and when do we get it?
So we get it monthly, and there is a line on the ED 279 that shows that. So and they do establish a payment schedule on February of every year for the next year.
Right. So if we added 20 students in a pre-K class next fall,
We wouldn't get it until FY25.
that's what I thought. Yeah. It's like a year late, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. All right. And what
s-
kind of, is it a same percentage of other students? I forget, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the per pupil cost is the same for
Okay.
4-year-olds pre-K. We get for the FY24 ED 279 7,545 per pre-K student.
Okay. Which is the same as an 11th grader?
No, I believe it's, let me just make sure that per pupil cost is same as an elementary school student.
Oh, okay. All right.
We get 8,022 for secondary students.
Okay. Do we get anything else from the state for additional support or funding for pre-K? And, I know we got a federal grant years ago and that's done, but is there anything else they're providing if we open a pre-K? For example,
Actually, sorry, I do believe that we would get the pre-K subsidy prior to FY25. I do believe that I had a conversation with somebody at the DOE and it's escaping me, but there is a provision that would, if you enroll for a new program starting the next year, you can apply to get the subsidy a year early. I would have to get details, but you just triggered something in my memory that I've had that conversation before.
So
okay.
you have to request it, Lauren, and then you can get the subsidy. I guess I'll just simply say, and I've said this a few times now, I would rather have a solid plan in place for increasing pre-K and then make a budget request than I would to have just money put in the budget and then try to figure that piece out. But however it goes, it goes. We've got a lot of moving dials right now in terms of pre-K. I mean, I'm looking for space. I'm talking to the Y. We're talking to Penquist. There's a lot going on with that. So it's nowhere's near as simple as just let's put money in the budget and start increasing the number of classrooms we have. And that's all.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But if our year over year is at 3.1%, that's extremely reasonable. And if we were able to put money into the budget for some kind of expansion next year when we figure it out, that would be beneficial.
I'm just being a process observer here. Do we have an agenda? Kelly, do you have an agenda? Just curious. I'm hearing a lot of popcorning of questions, but.
Yeah, tonight was supposed to be Article 1, and I apologize for being late. So
No
I
problem,
don't
Kelly.
know. I don't know how we got on that, or if that was part of a Article 1, or sorry, I missed the
No,
beginning.
I just asked the question.
Okay,
I asked the question if pre-K was in Article 1 as we're looking at it.
got it.
And I don't, I've told John that I'm interested in expanding pre-K, and I don't want to surprise the rest of you like 2 weeks from now and say, oh, by the way, so, and if it's just my idea and just my vote, I'm fine with that. I just want to keep the conversation going about slowly expanding pre-K, because it's great for students and their engagement and success, and it's great for families, struggling families in childcare and the cost of childcare. A healthy, vibrant pre-K in any school district is helpful to them as well.
Well, since we're here, I certainly do not want to sound like I'm against pre-K, and Lauren knows that's not even.
I know that. Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
true. That's just, I'm more of a fan of careful planning than I am, let's just do something because we know it's right, but we're working on it. Trust me on that one. I'm actually going over to Thomaston tomorrow to talk to the town manager and the library, so on, for just to look at space. So I'm trying to put some things in place for future, because we've heard from at least one resident. I know I've heard from multiple residents over the years that they would love to have pre-K classrooms over in Thomaston. So
Yeah.
we're trying as best we can to figure that piece out.
Yep. All right, good. Thank you.
So it sounds like we have a lot of exploring going on with that might then inform a budget conversations, maybe at a different point, but we don't have all the information that we need at this one moment, but we can revisit that at the next budget meeting, or whenever we have that information.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm looking at the updated status quo budget, Article 1 that Max sent today. And I don't know if people have had a chance to look at that, but we can just dig in with what questions people have, I guess. So to reiterate the status quo, this is not adding or subtracting. Well, can you tell us what positions, I guess, have been changed? Because I know there was the effort not to add brand new ones, but there was kind of shifting of people and things like that. So
yeah, sure. So I can go over the positions. Let me just make sure that I have it formatted to not show anybody's names. What positions or schools?
I just want to note the halo on my screen is not intentional.
we know it's a filter.
Right. I just want to hide a couple more columns here. Oh, hold on. You need to know what type there. All right, so my original projections on the impact to ESSER phase-ins was about 322K for the FY24 budget. After doing the status quo budget, applying all of the anticipated benefit rate increases, we actually coming in at about 329K that we have absorbed into FY24's general fund budget. So that's about a 1% increase right there. We were able to work with a number of the administrators and find efficiencies through our meetings with administrators. And most of those were not backfilling recently retired positions and realigning some of our expectations. So John, you can
Max,
speak to it if you
can you put that back up, please? It wasn't up very long for anybody to see.
Sure. Absolutely. There you go.
There we go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So just to talk about a little bit about process here. So Stephanie, Max, Janet, and I actually met with department heads, principals, and had in-depth conversations about these positions and others. We actually identified 3 positions that had been covered under ESSER that we felt were high priority positions to keep. One of them was a foreign language teacher at Oceanside Middle School, which we actually struggled for years to hire. And finally were able to hire, but we put it under ESSER so it would not have an immediate impact on the budget. The other one was an additional social worker at the middle school, which, as you know, is experiencing high needs in terms of students, mental health needs and other needs in terms of their behavior and so on. So we felt that was also a high priority position. And then lastly, an additional school nurse to cover Cushing. We've had an influx of students who have particularly specialized health needs, and without going into details, we had been covering 2 schools with 1 nurse, and this would provide a school nurse on site at each one of our locations. We felt those 3 positions were extremely high priority and wanted to keep them in the budget and then phase them in to the general fund budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, those are positions that we'd actually talked about a lot, particularly the language teacher over the years. And the board and everybody else had been frustrated that we weren't able to fill that position. We finally got a great teacher in there. And then I think sort of the other 2 sort of speak for themselves.
Yeah, that language thing was brutal, trying to fill that position for several years. And looking ahead, like Paul was talking about, so FY25, like that ESSER 3, whatever position that was, impact to our budget this year is 32, and then the impact is another 33.
It's 33. This column was just what I did in October, November, when we initially started talking about it. I was just projecting out what the impact was going to be. This was right. What our financial system actually kicked out. So.
Okay, but we if we continue these positions, we know we're going to have extra money in our budget for them in the following budget, not the one we're looking at, but the one after that, right?
Yeah,
so we have to keep that in our heads. Yeah, right, exactly. We keep that in our heads. Yeah.
And I just wanted to provide this group with just a little bit more context, because some of you received that article that came from an Owl's Head resident about, some school districts, like I think it may have referenced Lewiston, having to cut a significant number of positions. Districts are having to face that as a result of losing their ESSER-related funding. ESSER-2 ends this year, so all of those funds have to be spent down by September 30th of 2023, and then ESSER-3 is complete by September 30th, 2024. So if districts haven't been planning ahead for that cliff, then there is going to be a significant loss of positions if a lot of positions were used in that funding, and if districts are finding that they hadn't planned ahead for what's going to happen when we no longer have this funding. So we were really strategic about prioritizing how we would use the funding in the first place. What are the top priorities for the positions and what are the needs? We had a process that we went through for that. And then this year we went through a process where we sort of did that another time, sort of with a new lens about what are we finding that we absolutely need in order to sustain programming for our students and to sustain a level of support for our students. And then what does the phase-in look like? What's remaining within the grants? And what's the wiggle room within the general budget? So this would be a 2-year phase-in. Max was mentioning the 329,000. So we'll maintain that amount in the ESSER-3 grant going forward. And then it will have a $329,000 impact to the general budget. And then that will happen one more time because we'll no longer have that funding. So that's the impact of the 2-year phase-in. And at the same time, we're looking at efficiencies within the district if there are retirements or if there are opportunities that we can sort of downsize staffing so that it has as little impact as possible.
Is that savings there, if you will, shown in that budget total on salaries? I see that's, is declined versus what it was back on the March 10th on our previous budget comparison.
What was your question, Sarah?
So based on what Stephanie just said, that there's increases, but there also are decreases, and so I just want to see, is that reflection on, so the budget total under salaries on the recent budget comparison that you just sent, line 113 is what I'm seeing. 8,069,000. That's a decrease from the previous March 10th. So is that a reflection of all of what some of what Stephanie just spoke about, the increases and the decreases?
Some of it is, yeah. I think for now, whatever version you have from 310 should, hit the trash can, because this is an evolving process. So the budget is going to change, and there are a lot of things that I look at. Some of it is, the funding allocation per teacher. There might have been a teacher that I intended to split 50% general fund, 50% ESSER, but I left them 100% ESSER. So I go through each position time and time again, just to make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks and that we're catching everything that we intend to do in terms of our staffing allocation and our budgetary allocation moving forward. So with this version that I just sent out, it's been through probably 4 or 5 of those iterations, looking at each position and each employee that is employed under that position to ensure that the deductions have carried over, that the benefit increases are there, that their allocation in terms of which revenue code or earning code that they're allocated to is correct. And that's a process myself and Allie, the HR director, go through, and we're going to continue to go through as we move through these additional articles. So I was primarily looking at teachers prior to this meeting, and then, next week or in between now and Thursday, I'm primarily going to be working with Janet, going through all of her ed tech positions, all of her behavior, all of her, purchase professional services and contracted services, to make sure that we're in alignment and ready to move forward onto Article 3 as the budget revision continues to progress.
Max, can we look at the Article 1 that you just sent out, like right before the meeting? Can you explain the column titles, just so we know exactly what we're looking at, so I know how to make
Yeah.
good questions.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this is really what 22 actually.
I'm specifically looking at like requests and non-requests and
Okay.
kind of what that means.
So anything under request, if you see this, this payroll, so let me find one that actually has a request in it. So a request is
We're not
something.
seeing your, we're not seeing your screen, Max. If that's,
I
don't
figured
think
that, John. There you go. So a request is something that is kept within ADS. So it's typically like in this instance, it's a software maintenance agreement. So it's from one of our software licenses that we have to pay for every year. And we put it in the budget and we carry it forward if we know that that contract is continuing year after year after year. So it's sort of a placeholder like, hey, don't forget me, you owe this money and you're going to owe it for the next 4 years. So you can tell it to include that in your requests going forward based off of the terms of the contract.
Okay.
Non-requests are things that have been manually put in. So for this instance, and I don't recall off the top of my head what it was, but it could have been a new piece of software that, you know, Bruce and Stephanie want to purchase for next year, or an additional license that I needed to buy to increase the budget from, you know, $200 in FY23 to $1,838. So this could be, you know, Raptor Technologies or something else. I would have to actually look up the account line and review the payment history on it to figure out which exactly one it is. But that's the difference between requests and non-requests.
Okay.
Anything under the payroll column is specifically related to salary, benefits, and retirement. So it takes the allocated funds from FY23, applies, you know, an 8% benefit increase, and then also takes a look at our salary schedules to know that this employee was at a step 16, they're moving up to a step 17. So per our contract schedule, it knows that their salary is being adjusted up, their benefits are being adjusted up, and their contribution is being adjusted up based off of what they're contributing to retirement. So anything in the payroll column and column G here is a pretty static cost for us. We know that those costs are increasing at a pretty regular rate year over year based off of, you know, contract scales and benefit increases, and, you know, people's changes to their retirement allocations can change from here and there, but the system does catch it and updates the budget if they do that. So from now until the end of the year, if somebody changes a allocation to their budget or to their retirement, whatever withholdings that they're doing, when I update and revise the budget, it'll catch it and bring it in at a, you know, whatever change they make. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, and then obviously column I is the total of all three.
Got it. So when you sent it out to the principals, you asked them to look at like the non-requests? That's what they would alter? Okay.
Yep. So when I sent out my requests to principals, I'll just show you an example. What it did. So we'll take Jesse. And I created a budget builder tool for them. So what I asked them to do was to manually go in and leave me notes. So, you know, just made sure that they were not entering anything under benefits, retirements, anything that I didn't want them to change. So really what I asked them to give me notes on were things that they had immediate, you know, need to change, whether it's, you know, furniture, picture, and equipment, whether it was, you know, repair and maintenance of tech equipment. So they know that they have a projector in classroom 3A that isn't working well. They can tell me there, so I can work with Bruce to get a quote to know what to input into the next year's budget to make sure that we're covering the building-based needs as well as the district-wide needs. And they were all great at doing that and really played a huge role in helping me create the first status quo budget. But now I need to go back and really make sure that what we're working into this document, accurately reflects, some of the needs of the schools. And it's not carte blanche. I mean, administrators can ask for everything, but that's not the reality. They're not going to get it. I think we need to prioritize. But it's my intention to sit back down with every principal to review what they've asked and see what the impact would be to the overall budget moving forward.
Got it. So is there anything in Article 1, John or Max or Stephanie or Janet, that you want us to notice in particular? I know that's a broad question. But as we're looking at, like some of these larger requests or, not necessarily payroll, but the non-requests and things, is there anything that you want us to be aware of that's been put in there that's out of the normal, or something that you've had more discussions about?
I'll just speak for myself, and that is, I just wanted the board members and the budget committee to be aware of the very thorough process with which we have gone through this with our administrators and our department heads, and that we actually do look very carefully at the budget and make sure that the lines are appropriately budgeted but not way over budgeted. And it is a painstaking process, and it's a good process. That's all for me.
Yeah, and I guess I would add, from a board perspective, I would really ask that you guys don't get so granular. I mean, really, what happens above this line, total Article 1, there is some flexibility within it. We, go to the voters saying, this is the budget that we want for Article 1. And they're really concerned about this number, what was last year's budget, and what is this year's budget, right? I'm not saying that what happens in between doesn't matter, because it does. From an accounting and fiduciary standpoint, it does. But what you guys are responsible for to the members of your district are these two numbers here. I go through line by line and painstakingly do this over and over and over again to make sure that what I'm putting in there is correct. And I have my own methods, so don't judge my highlighting skills or whatnot, but I do go through, I've been through all 1,600 lines twice already, and I intend to go through them probably 5 to 10 more times before we propose this to you guys in May. So I'm making sure, this is my first time working in this accounting system. This is my first time writing a school budget, but I've been working with Pete very closely. I've been, networking with other business managers, really figuring out what their process is and figuring out what my process is going to be. I'm not looking to replicate everything that's happened. In fact, I think, I have ideas and whatnot, but it's my job to bring you guys a budget at the end of this process that I feel comfortable is fair to our students and also to our taxpayers. I mean, that's what we're really balancing here is, how can we ask the taxpayers to give us what we need, and how does the board support what we're proposing to make sure that we can educate the kids in the district? And, I feel pretty passionate about that. It's a big job, and it's, my eyes are tired. I'm like, just sort of get, fatigued by reading spreadsheets a lot, but it's important to us. It's important to John. It should be important to you guys. And, I'll do a better job of getting you guys updated, financials prior to our next meeting. So I'll try to get you something tomorrow for special ed for Thursday nights. Not making excuses. We just had an audit at the end of last week, and I was trying to run around, pull documentation for them. So I wasn't able to get you that before this meeting, but I'll make it a point to give you guys at least a day or two before the next meeting, so you guys can look through it and ask me about individual lines before we get on the call.
Max, is there any more information pending for this article that you're waiting for, or when you say you're going back to check and recheck things, this is just to make sure everything as it stands is all set, or is there any more information coming in we want to know about?
I mean, Article 1 could change some more before we give you guys a proposed budget, and it could change for a number of reasons. It could change for staffing reallocation. It could change from a retirement that we weren't expecting. It could change from a workers' comp change, or the benefits coming in at 5% instead of 8%. So yeah, it's not a final budget until we present it to the board in May. It's a constant work in progress, but Kelly and I's idea to break these meetings up by article, just it seemed intuitive that we would go in a progression, but if there are major changes, we can always revisit in future meetings. It's not like Article 1's book is closed now.
And I think if I can address Kelly's question also, a budget isn't total guesswork, but it's also not a perfect science. And I think one thing that you have to keep in mind with the staff positions are that this is a snapshot in time of what we know right now and our best estimate. And you don't always want to base that on absolute actuals, because a situation that's happened many times is we have a plan for the staff member to continue the next year, and then that staff member decides to, either move elsewhere or make a change or retire. And then when we have to refill that position, it might not always be at the same amount. Our most qualified candidate might be at a higher amount. So there is a little bit of, it obviously is not a perfect science. So I just wanted to paint that picture as well. We do have a lot of positions that have not been filled, but that adds undue stress and pressure on our staff and administration. So just, keeping those pieces in mind as you're thinking about this article is really important.
Well, precisely, Stephanie, and it's in that context that I just ask that, well, first of all, what is the most recent trend in terms of staff retention and open positions? Is it trending positive, negative, or flatlining?
I could speak to that on the ESP positions that we have. So bus drivers, custodians, people that aren't on the teacher contract, we're actually getting some traction using Indeed rather than other job sites. So we've filled a number of custodian positions in the past couple of weeks. We've filled a number of substitute bus driver positions. It has been challenging for some of the professional positions, like the guidance counselor positions at the high school and some of the social worker positions that we're really trying to target aggressively. We're going to take this spring to get out to UMaine, Farmington, some other liberal arts teaching colleges around New England, and try to really put our district out there as a great place to come and start your teaching career. I mean, we're right in the mid-coast. We offer competitive salaries and a great benefit package. So Allie and I have been brainstorming, how does her role evolve from a payroll, half HR person to more of a HR recruitment person. And, we can shift another member of my team into more of the administrative payroll positions. So, yes, I think we're making traction on the recruitment and selection, but more importantly, culturally, we're thinking a lot about how we address, retention from a school level perspective. Are we doing enough to, inspire, a better culture in each building? And, how can we support the principals and administrators to do that? What's their goal? How are they, really trying to just, foster great community within each school? And I feel like I'm ranting, but I'll let Stephanie or John speak at this point if they want to.
Well, I think that the non-financial aspects of this are critical, and I do think RSU13, it just feels like a very exciting place to be involved in and with at the moment. So that's great. I guess the purpose of my question is, you know, first of all, I can hardly complain about the granularity of this, the accuracy, comprehensiveness, and the actual number itself. 3% is something I think that we can probably do a pretty good job of promoting to the taxpayer. My concern, of course, is just simply, are we being competitive here and able to attract and retain? And I think your judgment is this is sufficient. We're not creating a problem for ourselves here of a different kind, namely loss of staff.
I don't believe so. I think we do a great job compensating, and everybody is on a scale. They understand, you know, where they are, with the exception of, you know, district salary employees, which are non-aligned. But we're also very equitable and fair, and level set expectations with them very well. So
I guess I'll just simply say that I'm feeling a lot more positive, you know, going into this spring, that we'll be able to fill some of these higher profile open positions than they were last year, because we had people that left very late last year, and we had a late approval of this assistant principal position at the high school. And that hurt us. It's very difficult to fill positions mid to late summer. It's a lot easier to fill positions spring to early summer. So I'm feeling a lot more positive.
And I guess we should have started with, you know, we jumped in with questions, which can come across as critical. And we should have started with, this is amazing. And I don't know how, you know, I don't know how much time this is consuming, how you're doing. I know, Max, this is your job, but Stephanie and John, I don't know how you're doing the whole rest of your jobs while still part of this process. So thank you. And it's clear that you really engaged so many people in the process. So I think our questions, or at least I can speak for me, my questions are, I want to know what I should know so that when I'm defending this and promoting this, that I could do that in the most intelligent way, not to pick apart anything that you all have done, because it feels very thorough. So I'm just wondering if there's anything in there that, you know, last year it was the assistant principal position that kind of brought people up a little bit. So if there's anything in here that, I know that you're not adding positions like that, but if there's anything in here that you think might have people be on the defense or on the offense a little bit, that we could know as much information as possible about, so that we can best support that.
yeah, I don't think there are any like hot button issues or line items on this that would stand out for, you know, there's no new positions that we're adding. We're not cutting anything that is essential to our staff, and nor would we. But, you know, it's still going to change a bit, you know, and as I said, I'm trying to look for efficiencies between, you know, the prior 2 and 3 years actual expenditures versus what was budgeted, to see whether we do have wiggle room to, you know, actually bring more money into maybe a support line, to put more money towards extracurricular activities, not to take it away from the budget, but to see how, you know, we may better allocate it for all of the kids in our district.
So we do our level best to provide the most boring budget possible. Right. I know we kind of joke about that, but seriously, if there are things that come up, we'll certainly highlight those for folks. We don't hide things. We don't hide things in the budget. We don't gloss over things. So absolutely, I appreciate that question.
I guess if I can just add one thing to defend, is I am really proud of the work that this team has done to be really responsible with this ESSER related funding. At first, I was doing all the COVID protocols and left a lot of the ESSER stuff to Pete. I helped to sort of make the framework of a decision-making process, but the oversight of those grants was really in Pete's lap. And as Max transitioned into this role, I took on oversight of those grants, and it has been a bear, but I am so proud of what we've been able to do with those grants, be really thoughtful about the positions, be really thoughtful about, you know, what our plans are structurally in terms of, you know, getting out of the central office space at some point. I think we've been really responsible. So I just wanted to give kudos to the team because that's not easy, and all districts are facing this right now that have accepted this federal funding, and it's been really challenging, but I think we've done a good job of trying to be careful not to have a big cliff that impacts staff or have a big financial cliff to climb that impacts the budget and taxpayers.
Yeah.
Well, the perspective you offered a little earlier of what we've done versus what Lewiston has done, because I have a feeling that talking point hasn't seen the last. So it'd just be nice to be able to discuss that intelligently. Were people to bring that up again, because you know, as John said and others in the previous meeting, you know, you just can't cut bone like that. You know, it's just. It's very random, you know, and as much as we try to be sensitive to the taxpayers, particularly in Owl's Head, we have to, this is a balancing act, and that was a good bit of perspective you offered earlier, why we're doing the right thing, it seems.
Hey, guys.
Yeah.
So I don't anticipate very many changes in the Article 2 between now and Thursday. So you guys can review what's in Article 2. I am a little bit crunched for time today because it's the Thomaston zoning meeting for our modulars. We're 3 on the agenda, and I want to run over there in case there are any district questions. So I'm supposed to meet our architects, but if we could sort of cut out a little bit early so I can get over there and support them and then reconvene on Thursday, that would be great.
I'm sorry we
Yes,
have to
and-
cut out early so that you have to go do more work, Max. But we can do that.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just want to echo what Stephanie just said real quickly. It's been a great team effort. It's very impressive.
Yes.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah. And I appreciate you guys giving us insight into that process, because I think it's really helpful for us to be able to share that process. I don't know how many people are going to be asking, but at least that we have that knowledge to share it with folks, because I think everything that you've said has just been really thoughtful, and being able to share that with folks, it makes it a little bit easier pill to swallow. One of my children is running outside.
If anybody wants, 30 minutes to go over anything individually with me that, you don't want to bring up in this meeting, or you just like have a light bulb go off and you're like, oh, I wish I knew that right now. Just email me or give me a call. I'm happy to hop on a Zoom with you. Okay.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Max. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.